My husband and my own mother teamed up to steal my $2.5 million startup while I was in a medically induced coma. They thought I'd never wake up to see them living in my mansion and running my company into the ground. But I did wake up, and they didn't realize that I had a dead man switch on every single offshore account. Within 48 hours, I made them homeless, jobless, and the main targets of a federal investigation. They wanted my life, now they can share a prison cell. My name is Seraphina, and I am 34 years old. For the last decade, I poured every drop of my sweat, tears, and soul into building Oratech, a biotech firm that was recently valued at $80 million. I thought I had the ultimate support system. My husband, Killian, who was the CFO, and my mother, Beatrix, who sat on the board of directors. Everything changed 6 months ago. A freak car accident left me in a coma. The doctors weren't sure if I'd ever open my eyes again, but 3 weeks ago, against all odds, I woke up. I didn't tell them right away. I spent the first few days in the hospital pretending to be semi-conscious, watching and listening, and what I heard shattered me more than the car crash ever could. I remember the afternoon Killian walked into my VIP suite. He wasn't alone. My mother, Beatrix, was with him. They weren't there to pray for me. They were arguing about the transition. "We need to finalize the sale of the patent before the board gets suspicious," my mother whispered, her voice cold as ice. "I've already forged her signature on the transfer papers, Beatrix," Killian replied, sounding annoyed. "The house is already in our names, and the mistress is moving into the guest wing tomorrow. If Seraphina dies, we're golden. If she stays a vegetable, even better." My mother chuckled. She was always too smart for her own good. It's about time someone else enjoyed her money. I lay there, my heart hammering against my ribs, keeping my eyes shut tight. They had stolen my company. They had forged my name. Killian had a mistress in my house, and my own mother, the woman who raised me, was cheering him on. The moment they left the room, I opened my eyes. The fire that ignited in my soul was unlike anything I'd ever felt. They thought I was a vegetable? Fine, I was going to be the most poisonous harvest they ever encountered. The first thing I did was call my private lawyer, Arthur. Using a burner phone, I convinced a sympathetic nurse to buy me. Arthur had been my father's most trusted friend. "Seraphina, is that really you?" he gasped. "It's me, Arthur, and I need you to listen very carefully," I said, my voice rasping but firm. "Killian and my mother think they own Oratech. I need you to activate the Obsidian Protocol." The Obsidian Protocol was a failsafe I had built into the company's digital infrastructure years ago. It was a secondary server that logged every single financial transaction, hidden from the main CFO dashboard. If anyone ever tried to siphon funds or forge documents, Obsidian would record it all, with timestamps and IP addresses. Within 48 hours, they'd already moved $12 million into a shell company in the Caymans, Arthur informed me after checking the logs. "Let them," I smirked, despite the pain in my chest. "Let them get comfortable. I want them to spend a little. I want them to buy the cars, the jewelry, and the designer clothes, because the higher they climb, the harder they're going to hit the pavement." The next week, I miraculously recovered. When Killian and Beatrix came to visit, I put on the performance of a lifetime. I pretended I had partial amnesia. I acted confused, weak, and completely dependent on them. "Oh, Killian," I whimpered, clutching his hand while fighting the urge to vomit. "I don't know what I'd do without you and Mom. Did you take care of the company?" "Don't you worry about a thing, Seraphina," Killian said, kissing my forehead with lips that were probably on another woman an hour earlier. I watched them leave the hospital smiling at each other like they'd won the lottery. They had no idea that while they were planning their new life, I was already signing the warrants for their destruction. 10 days later, I was discharged from the hospital. I made sure to arrive at the mansion, my mansion, unannounced. I wanted to see exactly how comfortable they had become in my absence. As the car pulled up the long, winding driveway of my estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, I saw a bright red Ferrari parked where my SUV used to be, Killian's dream car, paid for, no doubt, with the money meant for my company's R&D department. I walked through the front door, leaning heavily on a cane to maintain my weak persona. The smell of expensive cigars and heavy perfume hit me instantly. This wasn't the home I had curated with minimalist elegance. It looked like a tacky showroom for new money. "Killian? Mom?" I called, my voice trembling slightly for effect. I heard a glass shatter in the kitchen. Killian ran out, tucking his shirt in, followed by a woman that looked like she was barely out of college, wearing one of my silk robes. My mother, Beatrix, trailed behind them, holding a glass of vintage Cristal. "Seraphina, you weren't supposed to be home until Friday," Killian stammered, his eyes darting to the girl in the robe. I looked at the girl, then at him, then at my mother. I let a tear fall, not out of sadness, but because I knew it would make them feel invincible. "Who is this, Killian, and why is she wearing my clothes?" "This is, Chloe," Killian lied, his confidence returning as he saw how fragile I looked. "She's a specialized home nurse, Seraphina. We brought her in to prepare the house for your recovery. She was just testing the robe to make sure it was soft enough for your skin." My mother nodded vigorously. "Yes, darling, we only want the best for you. Don't be so dramatic." I nodded slowly, acting like I believed the most pathetic lie ever told. "Oh, thank you. I'm just so tired. I think I'll go to my study." "The study is locked, honey," Killian said, quickly stepping in my way. "I'm doing some high-level restructuring for Oratech in there. Confidential stuff. You shouldn't worry your pretty little head about it." I smiled inwardly. The confidential stuff was likely him trying to figure out why he couldn't access the secondary offshore accounts. "Of course, Killian, I trust you." That night, while the three of them celebrated with a loud dinner downstairs, laughing and toasting to new beginnings, I was in my bedroom, but I wasn't sleeping. I had a tiny encrypted tablet Arthur had smuggled into my luggage. I logged into the Obsidian protocol. I watched in real time as Killian attempted to transfer another $5 million to an account in Panama. Every time he clicked submit, the system gave him a pending notification. He thought it was a bank delay. He didn't realize I was the one manually holding the funds in a digital purgatory. "Arthur," I whispered into my headset, "is the SEC file ready?" "It's ready, Seraphina." Arthur's voice came through, crisp and professional. "We have the forged signatures, the logs of the siphoned funds, and the drone footage of the mistress living in the house. But there's more. Your mother, she's been selling Oratech's trade secrets to our biggest competitor, Vortex Bio." My grip tightened on the tablet. My own mother wasn't just a thief, she was a traitor to the legacy my father and I had built. She was willing to destroy $80 million of value just for a quick payout. "Good," I said, my voice dropped an octave. "I want it all. I want the criminal charges for embezzlement, the civil suit for the house, and I want the board of directors to meet me in the office tomorrow at 9 a.m. Tell them the ghost has returned." "What about Killian?" Arthur asked. "Killian is going to have a very special morning," I replied. "I noticed he's been using the company credit card to buy Chloe jewelry. I've already reported the card as stolen. The police should be intercepting them at the jewelry store tomorrow, where he's planned a shopping spree for her." The next morning, I dressed in my sharpest power suit, the one I wore when I closed my first $10 million deal. I didn't need the cane anymore. I stood tall, my hair pulled back, my eyes cold and mandatory. Killian was already gone, having left a note saying he had boring meetings all day. My mother was passed out in the guest room after her third bottle of wine. I walked into the Oratech headquarters at 8:55 a.m. The receptionist gasped, dropping her coffee. "Good morning, Sarah," I said, walking past her toward the boardroom. "Is my CFO in yet?" "He's, out on a personal errand, ma'am," she stuttered. "Perfect. He'll be joining us via a different kind of link soon," I said, pushing open the boardroom doors. The board members were all there, looking confused. They had been told I was a vegetable. When they saw me standing there looking like the goddess of vengeance, the room went silent. "Gentlemen," I said, taking my seat at the head of the table, "we have a lot to discuss, specifically why my CFO and my board member Beatrix are currently being flagged by the FBI for corporate espionage and grand larceny."
Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a video alert from the jewelry store downtown. I patched it onto the giant projector screen in the boardroom. The board members watched in stunned silence as Killian, smiling and holding Chloe's hand, tried to swipe a black Centurion card for a $100,000 diamond necklace. Instead of a receipt, 4 plainclothes officers stepped out from behind the velvet curtains. They didn't just arrest him, they tackled him to the floor in front of a dozen high-end customers. That, I said, pointing at the screen as Killian screamed about his rights, is your CFO. And now let's talk about my mother.
The boardroom was deathly quiet. I watched the faces of my investors as they saw Killian being dragged out of the jewelry store in handcuffs on the big screen. Their shock quickly turned to fury. Seraphina, one of the senior board members, cleared his throat. We had no idea. Killian told us you signed over your voting rights because you knew you wouldn't recover. Killian is a liar, but he's a small-time liar, I said, standing up and smoothing my jacket. My mother, Beatrix, is the one who coached him. She didn't just want my money, she wanted to dismantle Oratech and sell the pieces to our rivals. But since I'm officially back from the dead, I've already rescinded every executive order they made in the last 6 months. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a ghost to confront. I drove back to the mansion. I didn't rush. I wanted the news to reach my mother first. I wanted her to feel the walls closing in. When I walked into the living room, my mother was frantic. She was clutching her phone, pacing back and forth in front of my fireplace. She hadn't noticed me yet. "Pick up, Killian, you idiot, pick up," she hissed into the phone. "He can't come to the phone right now, Mother," I said calmly from the doorway. "They don't let you keep your iPhone in the holding cell." Beatrix spun around, her face turning a ghostly shade of gray. She dropped her wineglass and it shattered on the marble floor, just like her plans. "Seraphina, you're walking? You're talking?" she stammered, trying to force a smile that looked more like a grimace. "Oh God, it's a miracle! We were so worried." "Cut the act, Beatrix," I snapped. My voice was like a whip. "I heard you in the hospital. I heard you call me a vegetable. I heard you laugh about forging my name. I even saw the mistress you helped Killian move into my guest house." My mother's eyes darted toward the door, looking for an exit. "Now, honey, you're confused. The accident, it must have affected your memory. Killian was just... I have the obsidian logs. I have the recordings of you meeting with the CEO of Vortex Bio. I know about the $3 million consulting fee they paid you to leak our synthetic insulin patent. That's not just theft, Mother. That's corporate espionage. That's federal prison time." Beatrix's facade finally crumbled. The loving mother disappeared, and the venomous snake emerged. She straightened her back and glared at me. "And what are you going to do? Put your own mother in jail? Think of the scandal, Seraphina. The company's stock will plummet. You need me to keep this quiet." I laughed. It was a dark, hollow sound. "The stock? I've already tanked the stock myself this morning by announcing a restructuring. I'll buy it all back at a discount once you're behind bars. As for the scandal, I'm the victim here. The Coma Queen returns to save her empire from her treacherous family. The public is going to love it." I pulled a set of legal documents from my bag and tossed them on the coffee table. "This is a confession and a full surrender of all your assets. Sign it, and I'll tell the feds you were coerced by Killian. You'll still go to prison, but maybe you'll get 5 years instead of 20. "I'll never sign that," she shrieked. "I gave you life. I raised you. And then you tried to bury me while I was still breathing." I checked my watch. "You have 60 seconds. There are 2 black SUVs pulling into the driveway right now. One is for the mistress, Chloe, who is being evicted for trespassing. The other is for you." My mother looked out the window. The blue and red lights were reflecting off the fountain. She looked back at me, her eyes filled with pure hatred. She snatched the pen and scribbled her name on the papers. "I hate you," she whispered. "I don't feel anything for you at all," I said, taking the papers back. The police entered the room a moment later. As they handcuffed my mother, she started screaming, calling me ungrateful, a monster, a freak. I didn't blink. I watched them lead her away, out of my house and out of my life. An hour later, the house was silent. Chloe had been kicked out with nothing but the clothes on her back. The police didn't even let her take the stolen jewelry. Killian was crying in a cell, and my mother was being fingerprinted. I went to my study. The one Killian told me was locked. I broke the lock with a hammer.
Inside, I found the red Ferrari keys and his mistress's luggage. I took everything of theirs, their clothes, their gadgets, their shoes, and piled them in the center of the driveway. I didn't burn them, that would be illegal. Instead, I called a local homeless shelter and told them there was a massive donation of designer goods waiting on my curb. I sat on my porch with a glass of the expensive Cristal my mother had opened. As the sun began to set over Greenwich, I watched the shelter truck load up the last of Killian's suits. My name is Seraphina. I am 34 years old. I lost my husband and my mother in a single day, but for the first time in my life, I am truly wealthy, because I finally know exactly what my empire is worth, and I know that nobody will ever be brave enough to try and take it again.